Conversation topics that lead to sex. 1. Personal interests and hobbies. This isn't a terrible topic for making friends with a girl or building a bit of history in getting to know a girl. In that sense, it's perfectly acceptable. However, the way most people approach this subject will result in exactly what I said above. It will lead you to be friends, not to something romantic. Most men, when they talk about their interests and hobbies, talk about lists, resumes, and how long they've been doing this. You end up with a very factual conversation, and facts don't lead to romance and sex. Facts lead to friendship and eventually to boredom. It's a good topic of conversation, but if you talk about it, you shouldn't talk about it as such. When discussing your hobbies, you shouldn't list them. Instead, talk about what excites you about your hobbies, tell stories about your hobbies. 2. Travel. This one is actually pretty good, but with an asterisk. It all depends on how you talk about it. If you list all the places you've traveled, it's not the best because, again, it's factual and logical. That said, many girls are very interested in travel, and talking about travel and having traveled is very empowering. Travel is a bit expensive and exclusive. It gives the impression of being cultured and knowing the world. Talking about travel, especially if you've done a lot of it, can actually increase your perceived value, which is a good thing. This perceived value can help the girl appreciate you more, consider a future with you and, eventually, have sex. However, when talking about travel, you shouldn't just list countries and talk logically. Instead, talk about the stories you've experienced while traveling, not the trip itself. Talk about the passions, the feelings you experienced, like exhilaration and a sense of adventure. Talking about travel in this way will create a more sensual and sexual atmosphere. Simply listing the places you've been and the sights you've seen won't get you any closer to sex. 3. Past relationships. This is a very interesting choice because it's sexual in nature and relationship-oriented. When we talk about the 3 categories, third-party subjects, you and her in isolation, you and her together, we're talking about at least you and her and potentially you and her together. Past relationships are likely to reflect your future relationships. However, this subject can be very random. If you start talking about the girl's past relationships and her experiences are very different from yours, this can be a problem. Likewise, if you bring up your past relationships, you run the risk of touching on subjects that are sensitive for her. So it's a risky subject. It can go well, but it can also go badly. That's why I tend to avoid it. If you have to talk about your exes, don't give the impression that you're still in love with them or bitter about them. Ideally, your past relationships have been valuable experiences, you've learned from them, you've grown and moved on. You've turned your life around. This approach can work if used with care, but it's like walking through a minefield full of candy bars. There's a little sweetness, but also a lot of danger. 4. Work and career. This point is interesting because it's important and can be very valuable information. If you have a good job, it's a good idea to let the girl know. Your job can be synonymous with success, ambition, and character traits. However, talking about your job can be boring and not the happiest part of your life. While it's important to mention it, you need to do so in a rewarding way and move on. You don't want to go into the details of your daily routine or the technicalities of your job. If she asks about your work, talk about it briefly, then bring the conversation back to the two of you and the present moment. 5. Cinema and television. Actually, I hate this subject. Personally, I love movies. I think they can take you to incredible places and make you feel profound things. However, as a dating topic, it's very random. If you say, "I love this TV show or movie," the other person might not realize it. If he hasn't seen it or doesn't like it, it's not conducive to camaraderie. Even if you find common ground, it tends to create an atmosphere of friendship rather than romance. Movies and TV series are about third parties, not you or her. They're about the director's or character's intent, which makes the conversation less personal. The exception is if you're using this topic as a logistical tool for a second or third date, for example, by inviting her to a Netflix party. Otherwise, it's not the best topic. 6. Food and drink. This theme can be enhanced if you've been to good restaurants, indicating taste, money, and experience. It can also be a sensual theme. However, it can also take the form of a list or a summary, which isn't very deep or emotional. If the girl is passionate about food, engage with her on this topic, but if the conversation seems logical or repetitive, quickly move on. 7. Personal interests and hobbies. This isn't a terrible topic for making friends with a girl or building a bit of history and getting to know a girl. In that sense, it's perfectly acceptable. However, the way most people approach this subject will result in exactly what I said above. It will lead you to be friends, not to something romantic. Most men, when they talk about their interests and hobbies, talk about lists, resumes, and how long they've been doing this. You end up with a very factual conversation, and facts don't lead to romance and sex. Facts lead to friendship and eventually to boredom. It's a good topic of conversation, but if you talk about it, you shouldn't talk about it as such. When discussing your hobbies, you shouldn't list them. Instead, talk about what excites you about your hobbies, tell stories about your hobbies. Oh, if you're talking about hobbies, you should actually be talking about yourself, your emotions, your personal development and your challenges. Logical conversation about hobbies, which is what most people do, won't work. An emotional conversation about hobbies will work to some extent. It will establish some level of camaraderie and connection, but even that won't lead directly to sex. You'll end up with a deeper, more connected friendship, which is a good thing and has its place, but it won't be enough to make the conversation sexual. 8. Music. I'm biased because I don't like music and don't know much about it, so I avoid this topic. If you know a lot about music and can speak from experience, this can be a good topic. Again, it's a third-party subject and not ideal unless she shows by her behavior that it's a very sensual thing for her. 9. Family and friends and personal anecdotes. These anecdotes are most interesting when presented in the form of personal anecdotes. Talking about your life story, your personal journey, your likes and dislikes can add value to the conversation. Personal anecdotes make the conversation unique and help the girl get to know you better. Talking about your friends and family is useful if it involves personal anecdotes, but not if it's just lists and details about them. 10. Dreams and aspirations. This is an excellent topic, because it refers to the future. When you talk about your dreams, you're expressing your ambition, your future success and your values. Dreams and aspirations give a glimpse of where you're heading, potentially with her. This topic helps her imagine a future with you, and shows you at your best. 11. Current events to avoid. Especially in today's hyperpolitical climate, current events can quickly become contentious and lead to disagreements. Current events are third-party subjects that don't raise the tension from man to woman, they create tension that doesn't need to be there. Stay away from these subjects.